It was a season in microcosm on Saturday afternoon as chance after chance after chance after chance came and went for the town in a 0-0 draw with Middlesbrough alongside me to look back on a day of so much optimism, but maybe not quite what we wanted in terms of the result. It's the Lutonian journalist James Cunliffe, and we've got Steve Moore from the Luton Town Disabled Supporters Association. Gents, I don't know how we reflect on that one. That's 2 points that got away.
I was hoping that you were going to tell me because I still don't know how to feel about that result.
This will be an interesting podcast then, won't it? We'll look back on the game and everything around it right after this intro.
I believe our supporters are the best supporters in the country.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got this massive soul.
We're Luton people, and that's what we care about.
Hello everyone, welcome along to another episode of the Luton Town Supporters Trust podcast, the award-winning, longest-running Luton Town podcast, having scooped bronze in the Best Football League podcast category in the Football Content Awards. This season our show is in association with Solid, providing opportunities, provisions and assistance so our academy can fulfil their potential. As I mentioned prior to the intro, we're looking back on Luton Town 0, Middlesbrough 0. A really game of what could have been and what should have been, really, but ultimately a case of what wasn't. And alongside me, I've got Jimbo and we've got Steve from the Disabled Supporters Association. Steve, I'll come to you first as you're the guest on the podcast. What did you make of yesterday, but also what do you make of things overall? We'll come on to Luton's chances of surviving towards the end of the podcast, but what do you make of the overall picture?
Well, we talk about yesterday first and foremost. I would say it's been the best performance, honestly. This is probably the second best performance I've seen all season. And we at least got one more point than the best performance, because the best performance was Sunderland at home. And it comes down to a whole list of things that have caused essentially a confidence hit in the entire squad that has lasted forever, pretty much since we once we went 2-1 up, shall we say, even though that's the wrong choice of words, because obviously Coventry pulled one back. Since that first goal for Coventry, that was basically the last chance we had to fix everything, honestly. And the primary one with the self-confidence is obviously Elijah, when we talk about it, because actually, when you look back over his career with Luton Town, you probably don't realise that actually he, in terms of being a striker, strikers thrive on self-confidence. He's never had the one for the deepest self-confidence when things aren't going well for him. And I think that might stem back to the fact that he was never a striker growing up. He was a centre-half until he got to Walsall. And this is actually his second run. Okay, it's much worse barren run than the first one he had, but no one noticed because we were still winning 1-0 every week, and we ended up, mainly through Morris penalties, and we ended up getting promoted at the end of that season. But honestly, his self-confidence I maintain that we would be 15th right now if Perry Ruddock's shot against Derby had hit him on the back of the head instead of Tom Holmes on the back of the head. Because his overall performance yesterday was the best player on the park. Genuinely. If you ignore his shooting, he was the best player on the park yesterday.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I mean, we've constantly said that Elijah needs one to go in off his arse, or, something to hit him and bounce in, or everything else. So yeah, maybe that Holmes goal, yeah, if that was his, that would have been handy. I mean, there was even one in and around it, wasn't there, that he scored that was just instinctive. And was that Derby? The games just blend into one at the minute, especially pre-Christmas, because we've suffered so many defeats since that it's hard to separate them all. I mean, we didn't sort of discuss it, in the preview, Jimbo, about whether it was must win or anything else. We've discussed the importance of back-to-back wins, which again has eluded us. I think most people, would have took a point at the start of the week from that game. You weren't getting much from Burnley. 3 points were a must at Cardiff. And if you got the 3 points at Cardiff, a draw against Middlesbrough before you've seen the other results would have been absolutely fine. It's just the way the game's played out which is there is only one team in this game of football. The other team are literally hanging on for dear life and run for the hills with their point that they've taken. And then, you stick your phone on, flash scores. Oh my God. Every team that weren't winning suddenly started winning late on. Quite what Blackburn are doing in this division, I've absolutely no idea, but they're not helping us any way, shape or form. I don't know if that's payback for Corley Woodrow going up there or whatever it is, but whatever it is, that's not what we needed from them. And it just makes the picture look a little bit bleaker, but let's just focus on this game first of all. I mean, I've given you 7 minutes to come to your senses. How did we not win that game?
Well, this is why at the top of the show I said I still don't know how to feel about it, because I make Steve right that Elijah was very good in that first half, and so was Morris. A load of them were having fantastic games, Asgard. But ultimately, when you're judging strikers, as most people do, that they haven't scored the goals, and they haven't scored for a very long time. And Elijah's now got this really horrible record of 27 big chances missed by a country mile. Is the best of the worst record in the Championship. And, if he'd scored even half of those goals, we wouldn't probably be as in so much trouble as we are. But you're right. I think anybody would have taken a point against Middlesbrough, having seen what they did up at their place. But then when they rock up with an injury crisis and no recognised centre-halves, and the two strikers bully the hell out of them, the game should have been over in 20 minutes. We should have been 3-0 up, and it's not an exaggeration. And then we could have, throughout the rest of the game, absolutely recovered that goal difference that we give them up there, because there were chances again in the second half, even though that the game levelled out so much. So when you look at it, like, yes, a point is quite good. On the balance of it, it isn't, and it kind of felt like the most frustrating game of all, because you should have absolutely caned them. And then back-to-back wins, because the other results went against us was not helpful, but it wouldn't be a bad thing, and it would be the confidence and everything that would come out of that. So it's kind of a limbo for me at the moment. Like on the one hand, they had a plan, it worked, we saw it. It was quite thrilling that first half. And then you still get nothing. And then and it's that second point, isn't it? When you get nothing and you're suddenly thinking, well, this, all of a sudden, when you look at how leaky the defence has been, it's the fact that we can't score them is probably going to send us down if we don't fix it.
It's definitely that's going to send us down, because we've tightened up defensively, certainly in the last 4 or 5 games. Take the Burnley game out of the equation where we were down to 10 men. We have tightened up defensively. We're not getting opened up. Kaminsky's barely making a save now. That doesn't mean to say he's keeping clean sheets all the time. Didn't make one yesterday. Barely made one at Cardiff on Tuesday night. But ultimately, we can't stay up on the back of an improved defensive record now. We can only stay up by scoring goals. I've mentioned this in the last 2 or 3 podcasts. When we had 10 games to go, we suggested we needed somewhere in the vicinity of 18 goals. We've got 2 in 2. So now we need 16 goals in 8 games. You don't need to be Stephen Hawking to work out that's 2 a game. And we don't score 2 a game at the moment. So we've got a big 2 weeks coming up where the strikers are going to need to do some serious work on some finishing, because we're not out of this, but we will be out of this if we don't start scoring goals soon.
Yeah, just coming to your point, you talked about bullying the centre-halves, and I completely understand why you start Adebayo and Morris as a front two, because of the centre-half situation with Middlesbrough, and it worked. But right now, the only centre-forward we have that I think believes he's going to score a goal if he gets in the right position is Jacob Brown. He still looks like that when you see his movement and positions he's putting himself into. And of course, he does bring Brown on. And I'm like, I'm okay with that at that point. And then immediately he gets injured trying to have a shot.
Yeah, I know.
And gets booked in the process. I mean, admittedly, yes, it's a foul because the defender gets there first and gets the ball. So Jacob Brown has levered the guy's ankle, but he's trying to have a shot. That shouldn't be a booking. Of course, the worst thing is he's the most likely striker we've got to score, because he's the one that's putting himself in the right position because he's a natural forward and he still believes he's going to score goals. And we don't have another one of those at the club. And he gets injured in the process, so he comes off. And then we've got 2 guys who really can't play together in Morris and Nordas. And actually, we had the odd chance, but the last 25 minutes we didn't look as good. in terms of creating open play chances, certainly as we did before that, because they're too similar and neither of them want to go beyond the back line. So it didn't really fit at that point. But at that point, we've taken that Adebayo off and we don't have another striker, because unless you maybe throw Ali, who's obviously already on a right wing back, up front, and he's a winger, he's not a striker. So
Yeah.
even that's a gamble.
I mean, if your luck's out in it with Jacob Brown, that's for sure. We'll come on to the subs in a little while, Jimbo, because we made a big thing of them on Tuesday night. Didn't quite work as well yesterday, it's fair to say, but they didn't need to have worked well, because how we weren't 5 or 6 up at half time, I've no idea. Okay, look, if we score one of the early chances, we probably therefore don't push the game to the extent that we were doing at 0-0, and maybe some of those chances don't come along. But the Asgard one after 5 minutes, I mean, you knew then, you thought, oh no, if you're starting to miss them, we've really got problems, because Morris was winning every header. Absolutely every header. I mean, I've criticised the fact that our defenders just whack it long to him with seemingly no aim about it and just hope that he's on the end of it. Well, that wasn't the case yesterday. There's an awful lot of balls where he could win the challenges. I mean, Howson wasn't winning no challenges in the air against him at all. Borges wasn't winning anything against Elijah. But the problem we've got at the minute is with Elijah on this run, we need it the other way round. We need Elijah to flick it onto Morris, who might at least give us a sporting chance of offering something in terms of a meaningful effort, because generally his efforts don't lack power. If he had the Elijah chance, which we'll come on to in a minute, for example, you'd fancy you'd have beaten the keeper with pace, even if he'd hit that close to him. But the Asgard one, we've done some brilliant work down that right-hand side. Izzy Jones, who was given the man of the match over the Tannoy at the end of the game, even though he morphed into Izzy Brown by that point. Lovely ball into Elijah, whose run is really, really good. Elijah's cross actually is behind everyone, but the defender flicks it into the path of Asgard, but he just can't sort his feet out, and somehow he spoons it over the crossbar. But then you could probably argue 5 or 10 minutes later, he's got an even better chance. In fact, you can't argue that. He has got an even better chance. The cross that's fallen to him, 5-6 yards out, left-footed, it's come to him beautifully. Just put it in the corner. Don't even have to hit it hard. Just put it in the corner. We're 1 up, straight at the keeper. And they're of course, he doesn't miss them on purpose, but they're the ruthless things that we've got to find in the last 8 games. Otherwise, that will be that.
Yeah, and this is the unfathomable thing about Asgard in particular, I suppose, because he's proved the hero in midweek at Cardiff. He's got his first goal. We should be talking about him as the hero of the week. And he's come from Wigan, where he's been, for a midfielder, fairly prolific. 12 goals for Wigan before he came in January. So it's not like he doesn't know where the goal is. He's come with pedigree. And when we signed all those players in January, him being one of them, we were thinking, well, they've gone all out to get some attacking players to try and get goals here. And we're not. We're still not. And when it's put on a plate for you 5 yards out, like you say, of course, he's trying to miss it. But when your luck's out, it's well out. And I sensed it when it happened, because you just feel what's happened, the narrative of the whole season. But they were playing so well, I thought, well, maybe they could recover this. But then you had that keep coming back to it throughout the game. So why are we in this position? Well, this should be over. And it's the lack of ruthlessness there that is going to be a massive problem. And the thing is, I don't know how you fix it. I ask this nearly every bloody week of Bloomfield, because you could see what they've been working on to create the chances, and they created them. He literally can't be there, put the ball in for them. They've got to do it themselves, but it is not happening. And I kind of think back a couple of seasons ago, well, pre-Premier League, when Harry Cornick was playing, we used to have to create 5 or 6 chances to score 1 goal, and it feels like even worse than that now. But particularly on this game, how many chances did we have? We had 19 shots, only 5 on target, which probably tells its own story. But we absolutely dominated them, and against a team that's pretty much makeshift, still can't force the ball in. And you wonder, how is that going to change?
2 sides to that coin, though, isn't there? Lots of shots, but not so many on target. But lots of shots because shots are coming from outside the penalty box a lot more. Liam Walsh had 3 of them in the first quarter of an hour. The first one, the keeper nearly threw out to Morris. it bounced just in front of him, nearly threw it out to Morris. So the other two, he'll know he probably should have done better with. Certainly the second one, that he had a good chance to get that on target. He shanked it just wide of the post, didn't he? But
we weren't even seeing shots, like say a month ago, we weren't even seeing shots. So it's progress. And that's what I mean, there's progress. But it's not good. It's still not doing everything we need it to.
Still get too late, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, this is all self-confidence issues from the entire squad. And it's improving because people are willing to take shots outside the box. You look at the Portsmouth game, go back that, which we won. We're very, very lucky to win because there's a defender in the league you want on that ball more than a striker. It's Conor Ogilvie, and we're very fortunate he puts that over the bar. But there was moments in that game where players aren't making runs, they're not trying things because the entire club lacks that self-confidence. We've got a couple of wins. People are doing those bits, but it's still, see, like I say, the strikers haven't scored, so it's still affecting them in that area of the park. And those self-confidence issues, well, there's a whole list of issues that can probably go back to the Premier League season to break them all down. And I'm not sure we've got long enough on one podcast to do it, I'll be honest.
No, we definitely haven't. It'll be interesting to see if they get some sort of friendly in during this international break, a pre-season behind closed doors friendly. I know some of them are going away, but not the strikers. You know, Izzy Jones going away, and obviously Asgard's going away, and a couple of others. But just put a friendly out there against someone else who's not playing, just to stick them in a situation whereby they might score a goal against someone else that just gets their confidence going. Because yeah, we can work on this for 2 weeks, but all the training work's done against mannequins. You know, we're gonna do well to find some mannequins defending against us in these last 8 games. If we can just, you know, whoever it may be, even if it's a non-league team or whatever, it's just, or an under-21 team from somewhere, just something to get the ball to our strikers to go in the back of the net, and they suddenly start doing it. You know, I doubt it would happen, but it'd just be interesting to know if it's in the thought process, because the next chance is Elijah's, and he's played through beautifully by Morris, not Carlton. Aidan from Middlesbrough. Lovely ball, got nowhere near the goalkeeper. I don't even know where the hell that was going. Usually when someone goes through one-on-one, particularly when the opposition sends him through, the crowd are on the edge of their seat getting ready to cheer. I sensed around me in the Kenilworth end, people expected him not to score, and unfortunately they were correct.
Yeah, I mean, and his shot gave me that sense as well that... Yeah, he's been getting so many chances, as we referenced, the amount of big ones he's missed, and you just wonder if it was the other way around and Morris was getting them, because he hasn't been getting any of those chances. He's been the man that's been trying to drop deep, and he was fantastic yesterday. I thought, for me, he was the man of the match.
Yeah,
I thought it was a really big captain's performance. He won everything in the air. He was dominant, strong, but he's not getting the chances. And you'd want it at the minute. You'd want it the other way around. But I don't think that the role reversal would work in the same way that Morris, that Adebayo would go and win those balls and flick them on and get the chances for Morris. So we're in a real pickle there, because everything works nicely until somebody has to put their laces through it or find the corner of the net or something, and it's just way off.
I mean, the other thing you wonder as well is, if there's I don't know if the club use one, but if there's a sports psychologist who can come in over this next 2 weeks and sort them out, because, you know, this is clearly a mental thing. It's not an ability thing. You know, we've seen them score goals at this level. We've seen them score goals in the Premier League. A confident Elijah yesterday probably doesn't even shoot, probably goes round the keeper, widens the angle, and then just rolls it in. But okay, Michael Carrick's got a bit of stick for suggesting that the pitch was sticky and dry and everything else, and Elijah doesn't get that ball out of his feet when he's played through, and that's part of the problem. He doesn't get the power because the ball is still stuck slightly under his feet, hence why he hits the goalkeeper with it. But a confident Elijah, or an Elijah who's got his head unscrambled by psychology or whatever, probably scores that. So maybe that's something that we could look at in the next couple of weeks. At the very, very top level of sport these days, generally only up here in the head that solves, you know, that takes your Mo Salahs down to your Elijah Adebayos.
Well, I was going to make that exact point. I believe that more now, based on, and I was saying this back in October when people were already on the Edwards out man. It wasn't just Elijah at that time, and that's a shot hit by a guy that doesn't believe he's going to score. Let's be honest, that is the number one thing. And I was saying at the time that we don't need a new manager. We don't need to get rid of Edwards necessarily and get a new manager. What we need, unless that manager is Dr. Steve Peters or Dr. Ian Mitchell, and I don't think we can get him out of Newcastle, put it that way, or Mike Brearley. Don't think of
as a blast from the
well,
past.
I'm thinking of big name sport people with sports psychology, really good sports psychology. But yeah, that's what you need. That's what we needed at that time. And I say, it's obviously it's more prevalent at that end. But I generally think there's not a lot of difference, and we've seen it in Manchester City this season. Confidence brings those players down to the middle of the Premier League very, very quickly. And I don't think there's a huge amount of difference between our squad and the squads of the top 10 teams in the division, other than belief. And it comes down to, and part of it, I generally think it comes down to, I mean, heck, when we got promoted, I think most of us said we'll take the money run and use it to become a top, obviously Bill Parkour, and become a top half championship side. But we've gone down, and suddenly the new ground's gone from 17.5 to 25, which you can question whether that's necessary. The club as a whole went into the season saying, "Oh, we're going to try and win this title," and then Edwards has treated us like the big name parachute payment club and decided he wants to finally implement his style of play, which didn't work. And by the time he's decided to throw it all out and go back to what we did 2 years ago, was the October international break. We played averagely against you-know-who and managed to win that game because they were awful. Then, like I said, the best performance was 3 days later on the Tuesday night against Sunderland, and where we were magnificent against a Sunderland side that, to be fair, were playing well as well, but I thought we were by far the better side in that game, managed to lose it 2-1. Then we were awful on the Saturday against Coventry and were 2-0 up. But the minute that first goal goes in, you sense it. The heads have gone, because part of it is that everyone goes into the start of the season thinking, oh, we're going to have a playoff push. Then when we're 15th where we are in October, yes, things aren't going well, but it's not the same self-confidence hit to around the entire place, fans, players, the whole lot, because it pervades everything, that it would have been than it was when we're looking at trying to finish top 2. And certainly anything without top 6 at that point was still considered a poor season. And that's created everything. And then, I mean, I was at work, so I missed the Burnley game. I was listening to it, and James Shea was on it. And you could sense the minute Naismith second booking, and they're probably both bookings. One you could question, but in isolation, you go, maybe a booking's a little harsh, but you're not saying it's an outrageous one on either of them. And suddenly James Shea himself, a player who hasn't been on the pitch this year, you could tell the lack of confidence around the entire squad, because he suddenly started talking like, oh God, everything's going wrong. He didn't say those words, but you could sense it in the tone of his voice going through the rest of the side. I mean, he's like that, the third choice goalkeeper. And what the rest of the squad going to be? And Matt Bloomfield can't fix that. No manager's fixing that. Like I say, you need not just sports psychologists, because I'm sure they're there. You need world-class sports psychologists to do more than the basics, and we ain't affording one of them.
No, that's it. At the minute, you do get the kind of impression that too many players are looking for things to go wrong rather than making things go right, don't you? And that's where the January signings came into play, and that's why they gave us optimism. Ultimately, as we've kept on saying in recent podcasts, not enough of them are on the football pitch for long enough to make that impression. Yeah, Travers, who didn't have he done what you'd expect him to do, but he didn't make a save that I wouldn't expect him to make. Ultimately, got the better of Elijah in that moment. But again, the chances, they keep on coming. And, McGuinness flashes a header wide from a corner, probably should have hit the target from that. Morris had a sort of chance that got sort of spurned out, and then he crosses it. Elijah's just got to be on the front foot. You were 2 yards out, you've just got to beat the defender to it. You, the ball, the defender, and if anything else that's moving has got to end up in the back of the net, Somehow the defender, who's
Illing Jr.
I couldn't remember the first part of his name, who's a winger on loan from Aston Villa. He's not a left back by any stretch of the imagination. And still gets there first, then you kind of wonder with Ealing Jr. We had him on a yellow card early doors, and then in the second half, early doors, Jones, who's the man who's going to put him under pressure, ends up on the left wing, and you're like, that doesn't make any sense. And then just right on half time, Makoso had a chance as well, which he put wide as well. Acrobatic volley, half chance at best, that really, to be fair. But, anything that's going towards goal, we really need it to go in at the minute, don't we? But, I mean, Middlesbrough, Kaminsky could have come and sat next to me, read the programme, because they weren't in the game at all. I mean, they had Ian Acho up front, who's all reputation and, well, all kebabs and something else as well, because that geezer ain't moving very far. Azaz, thankfully, was out on the left wing this time, rather than pulling the strings in the middle. They had Conway in behind him. And there was nothing there, was there? It didn't take much to snuff out Ian Acho, but McGuinness was comfortable with him, and then the two wide centre-halves were able to push in on the two players that were in front of him. And they couldn't get out at any stretch of the imagination. Hackney and Morris were being dominated by Clark and Liam Walsh, if I can get my words out. And we were able to get our two wing backs as wingers, and we were going forward, whereas, a lot of the time, as we've spoken about, the wing backs are defensive because we're getting pushed back. This was very much Sheffield United at home, thankfully without the sting in the tail at the end.
Yeah, and that, if you're trying to find positives, that's the one thing about that, because that was the fear that probably was going through everybody. On the rare occasion they did attack, and they had 0 shots on target, which is something. There was one, wasn't there, from, I think it was Azaz, where Kaminsky threw himself at, and from where I was sat in the press box, I thought that was in, because he looked a bit worried, but you weren't so much, I know. But other than that, really, really nothing. But even so, you're just waiting for that. Well, they're going to have one chance. They're going to take it. They're going to be ruthless, and it will be Sheffield United all over again. So on that front, it was good. It managed to get a point, but that was 3 all day long, and possibly a massive chance to really claw back some goal difference. And that's kind of where we're sitting here disappointed about it, because it was all there. They fashioned that themselves. It was not luck. They got the game plan right. They bullied the hell out of players that weren't sure about where they were playing. They completely dominated a side that had dominated them up at the Riverside, and didn't give them a sniff. And still, you don't get the victory.
Yeah, I mentioned in midweek, didn't I? Every single opposition seems to be getting worse and worse and worse. I dread to think what West Brom are going to look like on the last day of the season, because can't be 8 more worse than what we saw from Middlesbrough yesterday. But then I didn't think anyone could be worse than Cardiff on Tuesday night. And Middlesbrough came down and said, "Don't worry about that, lads. Leave this to us." Second half was much more of the same, wasn't it? Okay, it wasn't as big a storm. It wasn't like the Alamo like it was in the first half. But again, the better chances fell to Luton. You're right to reference the Azaz shot. In the Kenilworth end, I thought the closest it got to the goal was when it went past the post. I was never sat there thinking, oh my God, get across to that, that's going in the bottom corner. But he didn't half fly across for a shot that I thought was going well wide, to be fair to him. But the best chance in that second half is Mark McGuinness's header from the corner, and from the free kick. And it's a brilliant free kick. And it's one of those, if you can get too much on it, he's got too much on it. If he cushions it or glances it, it's going to go in the other corner, like the last Morris goal down in that goal. Again, I can't remember which game it was against, but he actually thunders the header, and because he's facing the near post, he puts it wide of the near post, whereas a glance would have obviously drifted it into the far post.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when we talk about it again, I was waiting for that one thing to go wrong, and I think we gave the ball away in the lead up to that Azaz chance. Thought, here we go, this is the one thing that's going to go wrong. The heads are going to drop, and then again we recovered from that, and that was right at the start of the second half, and we got into the game. I thought, we recovered from that. Well, we're still looking a bit more confident with the midfielder trying to do things, people making runs that they weren't making a month ago, and then the Brown injury happens. I think, oh no, this is the thing, that their heads are just going to go for the floorboards again. And like you say, I just thought we're fortunate in that sense that they didn't too bad. Whether it was that or whether it was because Middlesbrough are that bad. And I was absolutely nervous the entire game because I've never rated Kelechi Iheanacho, so I was waiting for that to finish 1-0 with him scoring.
Yeah, no danger of that. I mean, I'd forgotten he was on the pitch until I saw him go off at the end. Very weird. I mean, I'm not complaining with Middlesbrough, but you look at the players they had left on the bench, Morgan Whittaker and a couple of others that had done some damage in this league. I'm mighty glad he kept them on the bench.
Yeah, he only made one sub, didn't he?
Yeah,
really
fours for Conway, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He didn't even take Iheanacho off. Like I say, you literally, until you saw him at the end walk off, forgot that he was playing.
And I presume that sub was only because Conway spent his entire afternoon throwing himself to the ground and trying to win free kicks out of nothing. But yeah, really, I mean, I don't really want to go over what they did because it was the sum total of absolutely nothing. But that's what makes it all the more frustrating, isn't it? That they've given you that chance and we don't take it. And what you just said there, Steve, I think the tagline for the entire season should be, "Oh, here we go again," because that's what it feels like.
And just so we complete their forward players, Bergzog was so not in the game that at some point second half I looked, are we sure that's not Whittaker? Because surely if it wasn't him at the start, he must have been on. But did he come on at half time? No, he didn't. No, that's still Bergzog, and you've not noticed because he's done nothing.
Yeah, exactly. That as shot aside, their front four did absolutely nothing. It's only in the second half when Hackney started getting on the ball a little bit more, and he does look a classy player. I can see why he's being linked to the Premier League. Obviously, he's been called up to the England under-21s. And Ealing Jr. started to become more of a threat down that side as well. But yeah, the front four, I mean, they still had Whittaker on the bench. They still had Giles. How they're playing a winger at left back, Giles' reputation must have really fallen apart. But hey, that's all their problem, not ours. Last chance for us was Nordas, wasn't it? Lovely move from Lamine Fana, who'd come on at this point. The runs that Steve's talking about, the midfielders going beyond the strikers and burst into the byline, that's exactly what we saw from him in those highlights in Sweden. Cuts the ball back, the ball goes past the defender. You think Nordas just got to touch it in, and then again, out of nowhere, Ealing Jr., who's becoming a right pain in the arse, throws himself in front of it and gets something on it and blocks it to go wide. In an ideal world, Nordas would have seen Mili Ali just to his right-hand side, rolled him in for a tap-in, but I've said before, if my strikers are rolling them in for a tap into someone else, they're not my strikers for very long. I want my strikers to shoot. I can't criticise him for shooting, but we do need him to miss the defender and find the top corner.
Well, we need that from every single striker. None of them are doing it, and even when you make the subs and make the changes, it's clear that the only person that's been scoring of those front players has been Jacob Brown, and then he goes off. I mean, Nordas has been used very sparingly, and when he comes on, still doesn't look up to speed for me. Still probably in his pre-season period, and obviously getting used to a new country and everything. So,
I am amazed he hasn't played an under-21 game. I'm amazed. He's not getting on at Burnley, didn't get on at Cardiff, sparing minutes in the 2 games prior to that. Okay, he come on for a little bit longer at Watford, didn't he? But since he's come over, we knew he was in pre-season. So we got told he was in pre-season from when the Norwegian league ended. He hasn't played an under-21 game. When's he supposed to be getting football? We're not going to get him up to speed if he's only playing 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there. Surely that's what the under-21 thing's for, to get him up to speed. We've played other players coming back. Mads Anderson's played in that. Why is he not playing in that? So that when he does come on, when we do need him, and of course, it was a last resort yesterday, because if Jacob Brown hadn't got injured, you'd imagine the 5th sub would have been Bowler, as it was on Tuesday night. But when we do need him to be ready, how's he supposed to be ready on such a shortage of football? Surely the under-21 game, even if he's then got to play on the bench, the following night or whatever, if he's coming on as a last resort, it doesn't matter if he's played an under-21 game, but at least he's got some football within him. You can clearly see the guy has not played football for 3 months, bar a few minutes here and there.
That's the madness of the whole football situation, where you haven't really truly got reserve football anymore. It's bizarre. I mean, how is anyone supposed to be getting up to speed? I mean, there are some players that obviously can do it. And maybe you look at Burke, but he's had the experience of having to come back so often. You'd hope he'd be well up to speed with it. But yeah, with the strikers, with Nordas, with Ali, you want to get them off the mark as quick as possible. If they're going to have any sort of impact to try and help you, And if they're being used so sparingly, then I don't see how that's going to happen. I mean, there was a big discussion pre-game with Bloomfield that we had in the press conference about Mili Ali because of his huge impact at Cardiff and how impressive that was. And actually, he said that, you said he can't play wing back, and Bloomfield thinks he can play wing back. So I don't think that's going to be his best position, and that's not going to help the goal situation. But just as a sort of counterpoint to one of the points you've raised in the previous podcast, but they need goals, don't they? That's it. The strikers, they need goals.
Of course he can play wing back. He's just not going to be effective as a wing back. That's the point of the matter. Victor Moses can play wing back. He's never going to be effective as a wing back. And now look at him. We're paying him to sit on wherever it is that he's sitting. He's certainly not sitting anywhere near the football pitch, is he? This is this thing. Has Mili Ali come to Luton Town to play wing back? I'd be amazed if he has, having been at Exeter playing right across their front line.
Well, I think it's quite obvious that Ali and Boa were all built to play because he wanted to implement a similar style and system to what he was producing at Wickham, and he very quickly realised we're going to go down if we're going to do that because we're going to concede an awful lot of goals because we can't. The players we had at that period in time certainly couldn't play a back four, and you look at the players we've got now, it makes sense to play a back three because ironically Isaiah Jones and Alfie Doughty are probably our two most likely players to create something, and they are both at their best at wing back. Certainly not a fullback. So, and I'd argue they're probably more effective at wing back even going forward than they are as genuine wingers.
Well, and which in itself is a problem, isn't it? We said it in the last couple of podcasts. One of the reasons why we're not scoring many goals is we're not getting enough men forward to score goals. That wasn't the case yesterday. That was just poor finishing. But in the lead up to these games, the games where we've really struggled to create things in, it's because there aren't people up the top end of the pitch because the opposition are forcing the wing backs to basically utilise a back five. Obviously, simple maths will tell you if you've got five at the back, you've only possibly got five at the front, and one of those in front will be a deep lying midfielder. So, it's a numbers game, isn't it? And we need to get the numbers in our favour now. The numbers need to be going forward. Again, it wasn't the problem yesterday because Middlesbrough offered absolutely diddly squat. But there aren't going to be 8 more opponents that offer diddly squat, and we've got to find a way of getting people in forward areas of the pitch, and we need to do it fast. It was kind of a surprise to many that it was an unchanged team. Actually, I think at the very least, 90% of people out there would have expected Naismith to come back into the starting lineup. He didn't. He was on the bench. I spoke to a lot of you yesterday before the game. The guys from Canada came up to me, gave us this scarf that's in our background. You can't see it. You can see bits of it on my shot. And lots of others. And the vibe was the same. We could understand why the Morris-Adebayo partnership was kept together. Middlesbrough got no central defenders. Those two will get mistakes or they'll bully them, and that worked absolutely perfect. But we all knew the risk that came with it of one of those two will have to find it within them to put the ball in the back of the net. And unfortunately, that risk that we worried about came back to haunt us.
Yeah, no question. And yeah, ironically, you also almost say that most of the best chances, actually, with the exception of the one that was gifted to us, didn't actually come to the strikers anyway. Asgard, who doesn't have the confidence issues because he was scoring goals for fun for Wigan, and he's just scored midweek. And that's why we ended up signing so many players. Almost a desperate, we need to fix these self-confidence issues, which actually comes back to another thing. That I think we found out that very few teams that get relegated from the Premier League do find out it's by fluke. Most teams that get relegated from the Premier League sell 12 and buy 13 because they've got a lot of players on Premier League wages who will get Premier League clubs. And we didn't have that problem, not because they're not necessarily played well last year. A lot of them did. But we managed to keep hold of them. What we found out is that one of the, not obviously the reason they do it, but one of the positive offshoots of that is that you get a load of other players who haven't been losing all the time. Which we found out, which a lot of others don't. I think the last team you'd think that generally kept as much a squad together as we did when they came down was Huddersfield. That didn't work out particularly well for them either.
No, it
And
didn't.
well, this is what Burnley and Sheffield United did. That's exactly what Scott Parker was saying after they battered us 4-1 on the opening night, that he came in, changed the squad because they sold a lot of players. But also he said they were too used to losing, so he changed that. And then when Sheffield United came down the other week, and Chris Wilder was very magnanimous, actually, about Luton and talking about them. And somebody asked him that question, what do you think is the difference? And he said, well, we had the opportunity to change it. And they did get a lot of new players. And as you said, they knew they were down from a very long way off the end of the Premier League season. So they could probably think about it then. Whereas Luton kept most of that squad together. And the losing feeling is just continued.
I mean, well, there's going to go around there, but I don't think we realised that. That's a hindsight thing. I think generally, okay, they may have talked like that, but that's things they're doing because those players were leaving anyway, because they're getting clubs elsewhere. If we were to do that, it's quite evident we would have had to sell players for what we thought was considerably less than market value. I mean, we don't know what bids come in. I think there's only really the Adebayo one, Fenerbahce, which we all laughed off at in the summer. No one would have sold him for that because he bullied every centre half in the Premier League. So why would we get rid of a guy like that for 10 million? So if those were the kind of bids coming in, you can understand why the club was like, no, we can afford to keep these guys and not sell at that price, which wasn't necessarily happening to Burnley and Sheffield United. You know what I mean? And it's quite evident that Rob didn't get the players he wanted either in August, for whatever reason that is, whether the recruitment team were looking at players that decided to go elsewhere, or we're still reacting to the fact that we got up in the first place. And because a lot of transfer recruitment teams work years in the future with a lot of this stuff. And actually, you look at the players that we have signed, some of them, Makoso, Lamina Fane, Nordas, those ones are not short-term things. I don't think any of them were expected to come in and necessarily start for us. In the short term, they weren't the players to come in and start. So whatever happened with those players, we're never going to know now, I don't think. And in fact, Makoso's only come in because we've been so desperate he's had to, and he's actually played really well. And that's true of all clubs at all times. The youth team products, and obviously he's a young player we signed, usually get their chance early because you've got nobody else, and we've had that so many times for off-field reasons over the years. You look at the times where our youth system's been at its best in terms of churning out professional players. It's firstly before the EPPP era, which is a whole other issue that we haven't got time to get in now, and secondly because they were playing from 17, 18 because we had nobody else.
Yeah, I mean, people are starting to liken Christ Makoso to Curtis Davies, and that's exactly what Steve's saying. He came in because we'd run out of players, and, we had to give someone a chance. He took his chance in much the same way that we had to give Christ a chance, and he's taking his chance, and he was solid again yesterday, wasn't he? He's developed a long throw as well.
Well, yeah, it's a good weapon, that. And he was confident enough to try a very acrobatic volley at the end of the first half, wasn't he? Which I've since learned. We spoke to Izzy Jones afterwards. He was saying that he's doing surprisingly well, considering he speaks very, 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 very little English, and they're having to get Kaminsky to translate for him in the dressing room and stuff like that because they both speak French. So to come in and do what he's doing in a new country, not speaking the language, is pretty remarkable. Really, I think everybody rates him. This is one of the bright spots of this. Since January, we all thought there's got to be some good players that they've signed. They've signed a lot of them, and he's probably proven one of the best ones. And there's no surprise, really, is it, that they've tightened up at the back. It's not just him, obviously, but he's I think he's undroppable at the moment. Regardless of what Bloomfield said a couple of weeks ago, where he said he might have to dip him in and out. I think you play into the end of the season. That's all great. We're not conceding that many goals, not conceding that many chances.
Yeah, I don't know how many of you out there have fainted when Jimbo said Kaminsky talked to a defender, but, I think you have to see it to believe it, Jimbo. But if you're telling me it's happened, then it's happened. Shame he can't do it too much more in the 90 minutes itself. Yeah, you're kind of right. I mean, absolutely, he is a strong reason why we've improved defensively, Makoso. There was clearly words said after the Watford game as well, because the intensity and the fighting spirit and everything else from that game onwards, shame it wasn't at that game, but from that game onwards, has been of the required level that gets us out of this mess. If you look at the results, 7 points from 12, 2 wins and a draw from the games that we've kept 11 men on the pitch. Probably weren't going to get anything at Burnley even if we did keep 11 on the pitch, but that's 7 points from 4 games, 8 games left on the same pattern. That's 14 more points. Does 14 points keep Luton in the division?
Well, it depends who we get them against. Genuinely does. Because of the games that we've got.
Yep.
Those 3 away games, our next 3 away games, we have to avoid defeating all of them and win 2 of them. I would say minimum 7 points, because the gap is of such amount that we need the 3-point swing on a couple of them. And we can't afford to lose to any of them. If we lose any of those 3 games, that team is maybe not safe, but safe in regards of us catching them.
Yep.
So therefore, we have to do that in those 3 away games. And maybe if a chance that didn't go our way yesterday goes our way in one of those games, well, then it's worth it. But it's not. But individually, that's not how it works, of course. And individually, that is where we are. We need that. Those are the 3 games for me. We get 7 out of 9. We've got a genuine chance of staying in the division.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. I mean, let's split them into 4-game blocks. You probably would be disappointed with 7 points from the next 4. Hull away, obviously Leeds at home is going to be a bit of a problem. Stoke away and Blackburn at home. You're looking at 9 points there, really, aren't you? Right now, Blackburn look like they've fallen off a cliff. You've got to, like Steve says, you've got to beat Hull and you've got to beat Stoke, or you've got to draw with Hull and beat. You've got to beat Stoke. There's no way out of this mess which doesn't involve beating Stoke in my eyes. Didn't think there was any way out of this mess that didn't involve beating Cardiff. Thankfully, we've done it. Unfortunately, they've countered it on Saturday. I can't see us getting out of this mess if we don't beat Stoke. They're the ones above us that are teetering on water. They're the ones that form against Blackburn, seemingly you can throw out the window, and that's their only win. They lost again on Saturday, injury time penalty to Millwall. They're going nowhere, Stoke. Everyone thought that once Robbins went in that they'd be absolutely fine. They've got a distinct shortage of goals. You have to win at Stoke. For me, you have to win at Stoke. You're probably going to have to win at Derby somewhere along the line as well. But in these next 4, if we can get wins at Hull, Stoke and at home to Blackburn, the picture's going to look an awful lot clearer and nicer. The reason why I said split it up into 4s is because there's a good chance that come the last 4, someone's on the beach. Obviously not Derby, but the last 3, West Brom may well already have their playoff place secured by then, with the first leg of the semi-final being 5 days later. You're not going to see any first-teamers in that game. That gives us an opportunity. Coventry, likewise, could also have their playoff spot secured by then, although them wobbling at Derby's no help to us, and Bristol City might be out of the picture by then. But these next 4, if we can pick 3 wins up from these next 4, and these performances are suggesting that we can, of course, you're going to throw at me, we've got to score goals, and I'm aware of that. But just basic performance levels, and I know I'm saying this in light of the fact that we were dreadful for an hour on Tuesday night, just shows that we could get out of this. But we have left ourselves with 0 wiggle room now.
Well, yes, that's the phrase I was going to. It was so little wiggle room, and that could bring out the best of them. It could be back to the World Seas mentality. Listen, if they play like they did against Borough for the rest of the season, there is a bloody good chance they get. But they can also play like they did for that first 60 minutes at Cardiff, which was they could barely pass to each other.
Well, let's do that. We won.
Well, that's 2 teams. That was 2 teams completely devoid of confidence. We talk about self-confidence issues pervading an entire club. You've just mentioned a team that's had a top 6 budget, and if they could afford to under the regulations, would spend an awful lot more than that. And given the results at Cheltenham this week, I'm sure they can spend a lot more than that. There's a self-confidence issue that pervades that entire club in Stoke City, and has done since the minute they got relegated, no matter which manager and which players are there. And they've had every type of manager and every type of player.
Yeah, unfortunately, I donated an awful lot of my bank account to said ownership of Stoke during Cheltenham. And yeah, if they can pay me back by giving us 3 points 2 weeks on Tuesday, that would be so much the better. That is the thing, though, isn't it? These last 4 games, we have given ourselves a platform. We still have to improve on these last 4 games. There's no way that these 4 games as a collective is good enough to get us out of this. But you've got to think Matt has improved after the 2-month initiation period. Matt's improved every club he's been at. So everything would suggest with a 2-week period that he's never had at these other clubs because they don't have international breaks. Wickham might have done if they had internationals, but not at the time that he turned them round. With 2 weeks to work on the training pitch, you've got to think there's going to be a significant improvement over these 2 weeks. Let's hope it's in the area where we really, really need it. So now we've gone to here as a performance level. If we can step it up to here, maybe that 7 points from 4 turns into 8 points from 4. And then the last 4, get it up again to 9 points in 4. 17 points definitely keeps Luton in division. I think that gets us to 52. You don't need to worry about going down with 52 points. Not happening. So therein is the task now over these 2 weeks. Improve to get to a level whereby what we've shown yesterday and to a lesser extent previous to that against Sheffield United. I mean, if you look back at the last 4 home games, and it's like, it's the home goals that aren't coming. Away from home, we're generally starting to fight a little bit more. Forget the Burnley game. We can't do anything about that. 6.5 XG in our last 4 games. We scored 2 goals. Those 2 numbers have to come together, and they have to come together bloody quickly.
They do. This is the kind of limbo that I'm talking about, though, because when I'm immediately at that game, I felt deflated, like it was a defeat, and thought that's why Luton are going down. I thought they're going down now because they can't score, and you've done everything and had some stuff handed to you, and you can't score and can't be that team, and you can't get the back-to-back wins like we were talking about that we need to start stringing together. But then you think about it and you talk about it in that terms, and then you're like, oh, but there is a chance, and there is a chance. And it's this constant bloody hope and despair cycle that we're on that is a bit of a killer at the moment. I can well see it both ways. And if you're glass half full, glass half empty on that, I think you're probably right on both situations. It's just very difficult to navigate which one you are, and it could probably change by the minute at the minute.
Well, I think there's an awful lot of people out there, certainly the ones that I've been talking to over the last week, who are resigned to Luton playing League One football next season. But that doesn't mean to say we want Luton to be playing League One football next season. We're still going to games hoping that we win. We're still looking at the league table, looking at a way out of this. Oh, if you win here and they lose there and everything, like football fans do, you can get out of this. Jimbo, me and you in the next 2 months are going to reference The Great Escape, God knows how many times from 5 years ago. Well, getting 9 games to go in The Great Escape was 1-1 against Preston, and we all thought that was a game we had to win. And when we didn't win, even though it was the roles reversed, we weren't particularly great. Callum McManaman scored a last-minute goal to get us the equaliser. It was still a draw, and we did still get out of trouble. Don't forget we took a 5-0 pasting in amongst all of that lot as well. You don't have to win every single game in amongst this mix. You just have to get a consistency. And Nathan was always talking about certain chunk of points from a certain amount of games, hence why I've just split the 8 games up into 2 groups of 4. So can you take 7 from one? Can you take 8 from the other? And if you do, 50 points is likely to keep you in this division. It's not all lost just because we drew yesterday. Yes, other results went against us. Can't do nothing about that. We just got to do everything we can to get to the number. Is the number 50? But then you know what you've got to get to. Is the number 48? Who knows? We won't know the number until 2 weeks out, probably. But plot your way there and get your way there. You don't have to get your way there here and now.
Yeah, but again, like I say, there are 3 games where we can affect that.
Yeah.
There are 3 teams whose number we can affect, and that's why those games do take on those massive importance. Talk about things going wrong, and you talk about that Reading game, and when Maytay came on with us 2-1 down, I was having serious PTSD at that point. I thought, well, this is...
When I saw him on the subs bench on Tuesday night, I actually referenced to someone, I hope he stays there, because I've had enough of this geezer when relegation back. And of course, he scored Cardiff's winner yesterday. Yeah, he's still haunting us.
I suppose it keeps it interesting if you're that way inclined, but I'd rather it would be a lot more comfortable and they just went... It's almost like every game has to be a must-win now. I I wouldn't hold out much hope against Leeds, although they're doing their customary wobble, aren't they? You never know.
Someone told me, and this someone is Steve, who we had on the podcast earlier in the season when he came on to speak about Nordas and Lamine Fanny. He's a big Leeds fan. Apparently, their record in 12:30 kickoffs is atrocious. So, Sky, thank you for once in your life.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah, I saw him tweeting about that. Yeah, no, that could be useful. This is kind of where it is, isn't it? You take the performance of Saturday against Borough, and then every other little possible good omen and superstitious nonsense that you can to try and get out of this. And like you say, that it is possible, but it also feels like it's a million miles away by the way the results happened on Saturday. Because when you talk about that Preston game in the Great Escape, for instance, McManaman scores a late goal, feels like you've got something out of it because you're getting nothing. And this one feels like we should have got everything. And then not only did we not get that, it got taken away from us a bit further by Cardiff, elsewhere, Derby a bit as well. And you're like, yeah, we are in a bit of bother here. But yeah, we've been in a lot of bother for a while.
But come that morning that we travelled to Hull, this is an 8-game season. And that's all it is. The 38 that have gone before it are that. We've just got to find two teams and beat them by 5 points in these 8 games. And you don't even need to beat Derby by 5 points. It's less than that. I mean, Steve and I are veterans of these relegation battles. They're never done in April. They'll go down to the last day of the season. They will, especially when Derby are involved. When Luton and Derby are involved in relegation battle, it does not end before the last couple of weeks of the season. It's just fact.
well, we should all know that because, as I mentioned, in the last 20 years, we've had 2 seasons where we've not either been in a relegation battle, already relegated, in a promotion battle, or worrying about the extensive future of the football club. And one of those we weren't allowed to go to because we finished 12th. And the other one, we got the FA Cup 5th round, and failing to make the playoffs was an absolute horror show for the future of the football club. And so there's nothing boring. The minute it was obvious we weren't going up, I knew we were going to be down here because that's the way we work. And you talk about superstitions. You saw me wearing one that I hadn't worn for about 2 years yesterday afternoon.
Oh, yeah, I did wonder. Yeah. I heard this, and I was walking down the outside of the main stand, and I heard James. I turned around looking to see a friendly face. I couldn't see one. He's got his COVID mask on.
I stopped wearing that after the playoff final, that one. And then I wore it at Portsmouth at home because I tried everything else. And there's an ex-cricket to Superstition in my middle name. So if you see someone wearing a Luton Town COVID mask, that's why.
It is getting to that stage. Literally anything that's lucky that you can wear, just wear it. And let's hope that the luck still maintains and we can do this. Look, before March started, the performances weren't getting us out of this mess. Now the performances can get us out of this mess. They've obviously got to be married up with the results. But hey, if you've knocked off one part of the problem, hopefully the second part of the problem, being the results, comes along soon after. None of you saw 0-0 coming. I've got to be honest, you could have given me 100 goes at a correct score and I wouldn't have been picking 0-0 with our defensive record and the fact that they had no defenders. But that's what it was, wasn't it? Of course, it shouldn't have been. We should have done to them every bit what they did to us back in October, November, whenever that game was. But we didn't, sadly. So no correct scores. I have got the leaderboard done, though. A few of you did go for draws. There was quite a few Desmonds doing the rounds, which was probably fair enough. And so everyone who has got points and made their way into the top 5 is about to appear in this leaderboard, which will appear on the screen right now. Steve, we've not got you here just to talk about football, though. Big month coming up for the Disabled Supporters Association, if I can get my words out. You've got AGM next month. Tell the viewers and the listeners all about what we can expect, when it is, where it is, and everything else.
Yeah, well, after coming on this show last year, we had by far the best turnout we ever had for the AGM last year, which was hugely beneficial to the Supporters Association. So the key details you need to know, it's Wednesday the 2nd of April, 6:30 till 8:30 in the John Moore, which obviously you have the entrance in the main club car park, but you also we will have the ability to have an accessible entrance at the Kenilworth Road end via the Silver Gate, but you will need to let us know if you require that. So either my name's steve.moore at ltsa.co.uk or secretary at maybe secretary might be the best one. Secretary at ltdsa.co.uk would probably be your best address for that. Parking's available, obviously, in the car park behind the main entrance to the football club. This year, we're thrilled to have another big name guest key speaker. It's a guy by the name of Liam Bird, who's the fan liaison officer for Level Playing Field. Now, you might have seen some stuff on the club website about Level Playing Field, and see, I think we mentioned it in the programme, but some of the stuff we've written as association in the club programme. But they, in terms of accessibility issues and things like that, they are the number one thing for football clubs in Europe and sports clubs in general. Actually, it's not just football, but major player in that regard. So it's great to have him on to speak, and I'm sure he'll have to answer some questions as well as obviously all the normal AGM business as well. We're also delighted to announce that Small Acts of Kindness, the charity Small Acts of Kindness, they'll be attending as well. So I'm sure they'll have gift bags for some of our members who might be over 55 that might need to take them away. I know we're coming out of the winter now, but I'm sure there's people, because we don't know when the weather's going to turn. We've seen the weather turn 2 or 3 ways in the last couple of weeks. I had to ice my car off I think leaving work up one day out last week. I couldn't believe that. But
I was still wearing my winter coat yesterday at the game.
Yeah, well, you saw how many days I was wearing.
And as a cricketer, you'll know the cricket season's on the horizon, so that's guaranteed it will turn back again.
Yeah, so the other thing I need to tell you is preferable to RSVP to the event. So we have a specific email address for that one. So that's rsvp@ltdsa.co.uk. And if you can let us know by the 26th of March on that one, that would be hugely beneficial. Obviously, it might be beneficial if you do require the accessibility gate to include that in that email as well.
That'll be in the show notes when all of that information. If you want to reserve your place at that, and particularly that gate in the Kenilworth end. I should just say, if anyone who just uses the disabled access in the Kenilworth end and doesn't know the other part of the ground, the part that Steve's talking about is the Maple Road car park, and the main reception just on the left-hand side as you go into that car park. That's the entrance that is open, and you have to walk up about half a dozen steps to get through to the corridor that then takes you down to the John Moore Lounge. So if you do have issues getting up steps, they're not huge steps, but they're steps nonetheless, then you'll need to use the other entrance.
Basically, go to them for the main stage, yeah.
Disabled supporters, Steve, I mean, for people out there who've got a disability, who think that that's going to put them out of going to football matches, that isn't the case. Where can they get in touch with you? How can they get in touch with you? How can they get your support and sort of become a member of the organisation? Because I'm noticing I sit right behind the disabled section in the Kenilworth end, and I'm seeing lots of different faces in the wheelchair section in particular. So I'm assuming that your numbers are growing.
Yep.
With that as well, but we want to get as many people involved as possible, particularly those who think their disability is stopping them from going to the football. How can they get in touch? How can they become members of the organisation? Just sell it to us for a bit.
Well, technically, anyone that buys a disabled ticket, and that's not just the wheelchair section. I buy a disabled rate ticket because I'm allowed to, and it's cheaper, frankly. But anyone that's bought a disabled ticket or it has asked and needed the wheelchair space, you are technically members of the association already. We've got your details. But yeah, if you want to get involved, that's part of the reason we want people to come to the AGM to help with that and ask us things. But also, let's say the email addresses are there 12 months of the year around the secretary at ltdsa.com.
You've got social media accounts as well, haven't you? And also every now and again you have a column in the programme as well.
Yes, and the chairman currently, Alan Drummond, so Alan Drummond at ltdsa.com.co.uk, so he will have them. So that's probably the best way to contact us, either via one of those non-named ones, chair at ltdsa.co.uk, secretary at ltdsa.co.uk, or by name. So myself would be steve.moore at ltdsa.co.uk, or again, Alan Drummond, that's Alan with an A, at ltdsa.co.uk. And we sort the parking through there. Anyone that with had to email parking at ltdsa.co.uk to try and get a space at Hazelby Crescent, which I recently needed to do because I broke my toe at the start of February, so I needed that space, despite only even 20-minute walk from the ground for a couple of games. So I need to do that. So all that's all the ways we keep in contact with people. But the more people that come to the AGM or contact us about the AGM with things that we can help with, and there's always things going on that we talk to the club about. I mean, we had at start of the season, if you enter the Kenilworth Road end the way most people do, on that far hand side next to Carlos Burger Van and what is now the through road to Beach Path and the Bobber stand, you go through there, you go up those steps and down the other side. Those handrails were split and had been for years, and we've managed to get it so the handrail goes all the way down now. And there's always issues that come up. I mean, there was one where the coffee being served was just frankly too hot for people to hold. In a couple of the one was in the new bubble stand. There was a couple of others. Once because it was only because somebody brought that issue up to us, and actually it wasn't a disabled person. It was just someone that was of an age where holding cups of coffee isn't necessarily the easiest, and when it was hot, spilled it all over themselves inside the bobbers. And it was only when they brought to us that we got suddenly 2 or 3 saying, that's true here, and that it's only that way we can raise issues to the club. And the club, when they're able to, with stuff like that, which they can fix, that isn't limited necessarily by the ground we still currently have, they've always been very good in terms of that.
Yep, doing great work for disabled supporters, these guys. Not just physical disability, of course. If you've got a visual impairment, there's the commentary with Simon Pitts that you can enjoy the game with and things like that. So yeah, any sort of issues with regards to disability and things, get in touch with the guys, secretary at ltdsa.co.uk. If you want to go to their AGM and all of that, yeah, get behind them. They're doing great stuff, and always a pleasure to have you on, Steve. And good luck with it all going forward.
Yeah, thank you very much.
That's pretty much it for this episode of the podcast. Thanks to everyone who came up to me yesterday. There were loads of you that came up to me. I was having a beer outside the ticket office, not via the ticket office, from the bar next to it. But lots of people stopped and said how much they're enjoying the podcast. We really, really do appreciate your support. Jimbo, you've been stopped as well, haven't you? And
I had a very nice gentleman come up to me, and sorry I didn't get your name because I was thinking only about the lunch I was trying to get because I was absolutely starving. But he came up to me and he said, and I think I've interpreted this right, I think the first thing he said to me was reverse psychology for the win, which seems to be the new catchphrase, but I appreciated that very much. So thanks to that guy for listening, and apologies I didn't get your name. How very rude of me.
Well, it's brilliant, isn't it?
Well, you know where it's going to come into play. It's the next game because of the...
Oh, we're picking and choosing our games, are we?
No, it's going to be reverse psychology for the win for the entire season. If you're sick of that phrase, then I'm afraid you're going to have to put up with it for 8 more games.
Listen, if it yields the results it did on Tuesday night, I think we'll all put up with that, that's for sure. Do keep subscribing wherever it is that you get the podcast. We will produce something in the international break. We've got the John Steele night coming up on Wednesday, and we're not yet sure about dates and everything else that Jimbo and I can fit things in with other people. So we can't give you a date of exactly when something's going to drop. Obviously, the whole preview will drop at the usual time. We can tell you that now. But we're hoping to get something done in between now and then. If you do want to go to the John Steele night, there are tickets still available. Only a few, though. So hurry up and book your ticket. Details available on the Trust website and social media feeds on how you can do that. Got until about Tuesday night to book those. We need to give the club exact numbers early on Wednesday just so that they can get the room ready for everyone who's coming. So yeah, get your tickets by Tuesday night at the absolute latest if you can, please. Great man. Obviously, I'm sure he'll be on good form, and hopefully it'll be a great night with the man who turned this whole ship around, 11 years ago. Thanks to the Barber Club and the Lower Level in Luton for hosting our studio, to Sean Grant and the Wolfgang for our intro music, and to Ed Smith Creative for all the designs that you see on set. From Jimbo, from Steve and myself, come on you Hatters, we're not out of this yet.
I believe our supporters are the best supporters in the country.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got this massive soul.
We're Luton people.